I think a lot of our understanding of spiritual gifts comes from a perspective of what we read in the Bible in the early church, rather than where we should be today in our relationship with God and our spirit becoming mature. And therefore, you wouldn't need the gift of tongues as I've known it in the past, when your spirit can communicate with God. Um, that being said, I've used the gift of tongues lots of different ways within my lifetime, having got baptized in the Spirit back in 86 or so, and prayed for a lot of people that could speak in tongues. But I've moved my position away when I've understood the context of what Paul was talking about in the early church and who he was talking to and when he was talking to them. And, he talked about those gifts being childish things, because we were not yet mature, and the Spirit was equipping people to become mature. And if we learn to develop our spiritual senses, then we can do all the things that the Spirit equips us to do, but without the Spirit giving it as a gift. That being said, if you're not operating in that level of maturity, then the gifts are very helpful. So the Spirit can still prompt us and help us, but I don't think it's the end of the story. It's sort of the beginning until we grow up. I do believe, therefore, that the gift of tongues is available to everybody. There may be reasons why people struggle with it through blockages or letting go of control of their soul, and different reasons why they might struggle with receiving that gift. Tongues really is the Spirit communicating with God. Therefore, the Spirit can communicate with God in English or any other language that you happen to speak. So there is the gift of like the speaking with the tongues of angels, but that doesn't mean that we're not inspired by the Spirit to pray. And therefore, when we speak and pray to God in English, it could easily be the Spirit moving us to pray. So that is just as much tongues as would be a tongue of an angel. Because in the bottom line, it's a communication with our spirit to God, not actually prophecy or anything else. So when I've heard tongues given in a church setting, and I've heard people interpret the tongues, I think probably of all the times I've heard that, I didn't believe that probably more than two of those interpretations were actually what person was saying. But what it was God's response to what they were saying in a prophetic way. So they might cry out to God and God responds, and the person is hearing the response rather than the interpretation, because they've misunderstood that tongues is God speaking to us. Well, it isn't. It's us speaking to God. And every occasion in the New Testament where you read them speaking to tongues, it was always them addressing God, not a prophetic word from God to us in another language. What would be the point of that? He could speak to us prophetically directly. So he doesn't need to speak it through a tongue. It's our spirit engaging with God. And it can help edify, build up. I certainly teach a lot of how to develop that gift and use it to develop the ability to do multiple things at the same time. So I can speak in tongues while doing something else. I could speak in tongues in my mind while doing something else, or even while speaking in the normal way. And therefore my spirit can be encouraged to continually be talking to God and communicating, which I think is really what we can live in, a state of being where we're continually in relationship with God and connected fellowship wise in communion, in which we're not communicating verbally, but we're communicating at a spirit to spirit level. If you enjoy these videos, would you please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help. Thank you very much.